Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. We're going to talk about a few different things in this video. First, what I've most recently read. I'm going to walk you through two books by Ayşegül Savaş, who's a Turkish author that I really enjoy. Secondly, I'll talk you through another book of hers that I've read that's about Paris. So we'll dive deep into my favorite books all about Paris that you need to read if you want to feel transported there, or if you have a planned trip coming up to Paris. This is what I recommend you read. And at the very end, I'm going to share with you my tips on how I make time for reading. It's kind of a ritual, but it's simple, and I'll tell you more about it later in this video. So I'm glad you're here. Welcome to my bookshelf, and let's get into it. I'm going to highlight two books for you that I recently read by Ayşegül Savaş, who is a Turkish author, but she's based in Paris. The first one was on Barack Obama's reading list a couple years back. It's called The Anthropologist. One Goodreads review of The Anthropologist that I found lovely, and I'll put it on screen. Basically, it was like, The Anthropologist is a book you read when you want to feel vibey, when you want to feel like you've just watched an ASMR day in the life of video of someone's life, but in book format. The Anthropologist follows a woman who's doing a documentary film on a small park in her neighborhood, and also she and her husband are searching for an apartment to purchase. There's no real key rising action and big conflict and then denouement. It's more of this is clearly daily life, and there are good things that happen to her and then harder things that she has to process, but it feels like a little slice of life, and I really enjoyed it. White on White, by comparison, is deeply, and I would say is my favorite of the two, unsettling. The general energy of that book is there's something wrong, and you're figuring it out as the narrator figures it out. In this case, the narrator is a graduate student in art history, which is like a personal passion, hobby of mine. So that was a fun connection for me. I think presumably again in Paris, and she rents an apartment from an older couple, and the wife ends up kind of moving in to the upstairs studio. So their lives start to overlap in more and more bizarre, kind of problematic ways. There's a big reveal at the end that I won't give away, but the whole book kind of had me uneasy, and I weirdly loved that. You should definitely check out her works. They're not too terribly long either. Both books come in at about 200 pages, so quick reads, kind of knock them out. And on my path to read 100 books this year, what I'm trying to do is mix in some of these shorter, but I find literary and thought-provoking works with some longer form works. What I don't want to do in this year of trying to read 100 books is only read short little books or just beach reads, because I want to get the book count and then ultimately not read anything that I found interesting. So this is kind of my happy medium. Literary fiction, but that's shorter, that I'm sprinkling in amidst these longer reads. Ayşegül Savaş wrote Walking on the Ceiling, which is, I would say, a bit of a self-insert for this author, in that she is Turkish, she lives in Paris, and this character is a Turkish writer, and she lives in Paris. And they go on long walks, her and a mentor of hers, who she really admires. Paris is an extremely walkable city. This book captures that beautifully, and something I particularly loved about it was how immersive it felt, and how I literally could see the path she was walking, because I had walked it myself before, and so it felt really lovely and nostalgic, even though it is in a fictional context. Walking on the Ceiling, when you go to Paris, you'll walk everywhere, and so this will feel really relevant. In no particular order, here are other books you should definitely read. 2-part series, books that I have turned to again and again. The New Paris and the New Parisienne by Lindsey Tramuta. My copies are downstairs on display. Lindsey's a wonderful human. I've gotten to meet her a couple times, and she's an American journalist who lives in Paris. Shout out to Lindsey. She's just lovely and an incredible writer. So she's really carefully documented the burgeoning kind of new food scene, new coffee scene in Paris. That's what New Paris is about. And the New Parisienne specifically focus on les Parisiennes, the women of Paris. So would highly recommend. These are going to be texts you should read before you go. Take notes. Probably don't bring them with you because they're bigger, but have them on hand. Another book I'll highlight. This is a work of fiction by Ann Mah, another American in Paris. And this particularly focuses on Jacqueline, or as she became to be known in English, of course, Jacqueline Kennedy, and her year that she spends studying in Paris, in post-war Paris. So she's there not terribly long after World War II has ended, and so she experiences Paris at a very transitional time. I loved the world that Ann Mah builds, and this, I've read a lot of books set in World War II Paris, but to experience and explore the post-World War II kind of Reconstruction era from the perspective of a woman who becomes very, very well known in the American psyche. And I think particularly as the series about John JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette has come out, if you're interested in kind of diving into Kennedy lore, this is an interesting take, a fictional take on one of the future members of the Kennedy clan. And I will highlight too here that a number of these books were recommended to me by this excellent little bookstore, the Red Wheelbarrow Bookstore, which is in the 6th or 5th Saint-Germain-des-Prés, run by an American. And so she has a lot of English language selections. So when you go ask what you should read specifically about Paris or set in Paris, and she'll give you really great recommendations. So that's always my approach when I'm in a new bookstore in a new place, is to ask the owner. They'll know better than I will about what to read. The next book that she recommended to me is called Dreaming in French. It's by Alice Kaplan, the Paris years of Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, Susan Sontag, and Angela Davis. So follows these three incredible women and who all spent time in Paris and how it shaped them and the women they become. I like that it focuses on three very different women and shows how this same city managed to impact and shape who they. This one is historical as opposed to the fictional account by Ann Mah, but another great way to look at particularly 20th century Paris, post-war Paris, and in the case of Susan Sontag and Angela Davis, its impact on American theory, critique, and the voices of their generation. Next, I'll recommend Paris in Stride, which is a just lovely little book with these sweet little illustrations and drawings. For example, the drawings, the watercolors are really beautiful. You will be walking 15,000, 20,000 steps a day minimum when you're in Paris. I'm hoping for you that the weather is good because otherwise you'll just get wet, and that's just part of it. I really want to reread this one, actually. I'm going to set this one to reread. Lastly, but not least, is How to Be Parisian Wherever You Are, Love, Style, and Bad Habits. Here's the thing, friends. I've written about this before. I can't tell if this book is a joke. This book is so silly and ridiculous and wonderful all at the same time. It really leans into some of the stereotypes about the Parisienne and, focuses on, you're going to roll out of bed and you're going to have your cigarette and your croissant and, kind of go through your day all the way to your apéro, and you're going to give up on the workout you're going to do because, of course, you weren't going to do that workout. I've read this a couple times. I enjoy it as a bit of a vignette, a bit of a parody. I wouldn't say take it too literally or seriously. It provides a narrow look at what it means to be Parisian, what it means to be French, namely white, able-bodied, cis women in Paris. So, of course, yeah, sure, I find myself seen in that content, but what it doesn't capture is the diversity of the Parisian experience. So take this with a grain of salt. It's a fun read. Honestly, I enjoyed it, but I really can't tell, and you tell me in the comments, are they serious? I don't think so. If they are, I might rethink my recommendation on this book because I think it's a little cliche. Actually, lastly but not least, you've heard me talk about, if you've seen my other videos, about translations of Simone de Beauvoir that I've really been enjoying, like The Inseparables or The Image of Her. Lauren Elkin is, again, another American in Paris. She's a writer, and she wrote number 91, 92, Notes on a Parisian Commute, a short little book that literally she just writes as notes on her phone. So anyone who writes little stories and vignettes, myself included, on their phone will feel inspired because you too can write a book. And it's about her commute, daily commute on this bus every single day, from home to work and back. And so, again, I would say full circle to The Anthropologist by Ayşegül Savaş this is a slice of life. You're getting this daily, quotidian, routine look at Lauren's life. This is her writing about herself and her life. It's a kind of memoir in style and quality. I really enjoyed it. And in a way, you can feel like this text feels accessible. You can feel seen. She's both talking to herself and for her audience at the same time. And then she chooses to share it with us. So we get this really lovely window into her worldview. I would recommend really anything by Lauren Elkin. Really great. I've talked a lot about her books on my channel. She has a bunch of good ones that I'd recommend. And this is just one. So those are all my recommendations in terms of books set in about Paris that you should read before you go or after you come back to really immerse yourself in the world of Paris again. I have a Paris guide that I've written that I have personally hand-selected and curated all my favorite spots and restaurants and cafes and wine bars, etc. in Paris. So if you want to check that out, go to my website, wanderingsoulsarah.com. But I've thought about doing a longer video about Paris and what I love about it, where I'd recommend you go. Full disclosure, don't live there, but I go there every year and speak French and feel really strongly about the place and why it matters. So if you want to see that from me, let me know. I think I'll be creating that for you if you're interested in the coming weeks. Here's the conundrum that people present to me when I talk about reading and people, share their reading goals for the year. Generally, I don't share mine because I don't know who wants to be that person who's like, well, actually, your goal might be this number, but my goal is something higher. Great, good. But one of the main questions that I get is like, how do you make the time to read? Like, how do you possibly read that many books in a year? I mean, we'll see about this year, but in past years, I've read anywhere from 52 to 70. It's pretty typical for me, about a book a week. Full disclosure, we don't have kids. And I think a big part of how I can read so much is I have a lot of free time. So long, quiet mornings where I can read, time in the evenings, time before bed to pick up a book and finish them. I also think I read somewhat quickly. I will shout out my friend Emily, who definitely reads faster than me. So I don't read the fastest, but I don't read the slowest. So there's some amount of pacing that goes into it as well. But logistically, things that you can control and what you can do now is to read more. I'll highlight a few. What you'll want to do first off is put your phone in another room. Maybe you're watching me on your phone. Hello, I'm glad you're here and all that. But, one of the reasons you're not reading is you're on your phone. Average screen time in the US, I want to say is like 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day. And that probably doesn't include screen time for work, where you're on the, computer for many more hours a day. You're scrolling, you're on social media, maybe you're reading some articles, short form, that sort of thing. Great. But yeah, you're not reading because you're on your phone. And the only way to keep yourself from yourself, protect yourself from yourself, is to put your phone away where you can't see it, hear it. I would actually say turn it off would be best, but I think that causes people a lot of anxiety. So just put it in another room on silent, do not disturb. I like to plug my phone in downstairs and read upstairs. So I literally have a barrier that I have to go all the way downstairs to go get my phone. And that's usually enough to not go get my phone. So put your phone in another room. Get yourself a little beverage. Ideally non-alcoholic, because I feel like the later it gets, if I have a glass of wine, I just fall asleep. So get yourself a beverage, a little herbal tea, a little water, a little bubbly water. You do you. Have a little moment, like make it a moment, make it a thing. Find a quiet space. You know, easier said than done, depending on like your home situation and the reality of where you live. But try to find somewhere quiet or somewhere where there's a lot of just kind of noise, background noise, where you can tune it out, like a coffee shop, or, you know, just pop your headphones in and read. Another tip to read more. If you don't like the book, put it down. If you're not into the book you're reading in the first 50 pages, in the first 100 pages, like typical books, probably 300, 400 pages, you're like a third of the way in, quarter of the way in. If you don't like it, you're not going to like it. One of the ways I read as much as I do is if I start reading a book and don't love it, I just put it down. I'm like, you know what? I'll come back to it if I'm really excited about it. But chances are pretty good that if I'm not hooked by that point, that I won't be. So I kind of cut my losses. Before I kind of had this informal rule for myself, I would just languish in a book because I felt like I'd started it, so I felt obligated to finish it. There's no obligation to finish any book, you know, because it's a classic or because you were recommended it or because so-and-so said it was great. Like, no. If you don't love it, put it down. You might come back to it. You might not. Chances are good, once you find a book you actually love, you'll seek it out because you're hooked, you're into it, you're into the storyline, you're invested. Cut your losses, sunk cost fallacy, don't let it get you, because it got me for a very long time. I feel like those are mainly the things that I'd want to highlight for you. Find a quiet space, put your phone away, cut your losses if you're not really loving it. Read for the sheer pleasure of it, right? Don't feel like you have to read the most intense literary books or only the classics or only Shakespeare. Like, you know, if you love beach reads, read beach reads. If you love romantasy, read romantasy. I have a bunch of Sarah J. Maas on these shelves and they're fun, right? Give yourself permission to just read and enjoy reading for reading's sake. Don't make it this chore. Don't make it stressful, because if it's something you don't enjoy, like anything, any habit, workouts, reading, anything you're trying to learn or get better at, you know, if you don't enjoy it, you won't do it. So that's my recommendation on how to read more, is to simply make more time for it. And you'll probably make more time for it if you enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed today's video. We covered a lot of topics. And if you like videos in more of this style where we talk about a few different things as opposed to just one topic, let me know. I hope you read lots of good books this week. I hope you think about going to Paris, because I'm always thinking about that, and that you make time for the things you love. That's all, and hope to see you soon.